98% of all energy efficiency projects are not approved. Yet, we have close to 6 million buildings in the U.S. that have an average age of 50 years old. And inside of those buildings, we still have 30-year-old technology. Yet, the technology that we need, the more efficient technology that we need, exists. So what is it that we need to do to move forward with adopting these technologies? Because they continually get denied. What we're looking for is a change in our approach to these projects. Hello, everyone. This is Scott Ringline. I'm the president and founding partner of the Energy Alliance Group of North America, and we are a project developer for energy efficiency and cost recovery projects. I'm going to be your host today for the webcast. So what brings us together? OHM and the Energy Alliance Group of North America have been collaborating on some mutual projects over the last couple of months. And the first project that we're going to be working on together is for the University of Michigan. It's for the Intercooperative Housing, which is a nonprofit organization for housing students. And it's a project that's going to be funded with a new and unique program called PACE. This funding will be used for all of the energy efficiency upgrades that we're going to be working on. And OHM had expressed interest in learning more about PACE. So today we're going to be talking about PACE, the project itself, give you an introduction of the Energy Alliance Group, and then in the end, we'll give a case study in regards to a project that is already using PACE and how that's working out. Now, before we get started, the presentation is going to be about 45 minutes. You will be able to ask questions during the webcast, but they will be answered outside of this broadcast. So we encourage you to ask questions, and most certainly we'll have follow-up. On the last slide, there will be contact information for myself, our company, and our Vice President of Sales and Marketing. And then you will also be offered the opportunity to download a copy of this presentation, but more importantly, a publication that we created for OHM on PACE and its benefits to your clients. What we would like to do is make sure that you have a better understanding of us as an organization working with OHM and a better understanding of this new financing tool. It's allowing companies to finally move forward with adopting the energy efficiency improvements that they've wanted for so long. The Energy Alliance Group of North America is supported by two divisions, the Energy Alliance Group of Michigan and the Energy Alliance Group of Ohio. We have been around since 2012, and we've done projects from Texas to the UP in Michigan. What makes us a little unique compared to a lot of others out there is our approach to projects. We're technology agnostic, and we focus on solutions rather than a technology. And our approach includes technologies, financing, incentives, and services. What we see out in industry is that our clients are looking for someone to come in and help them with everything rather than just selling them one thing and then they're responsible for figuring out how to use it or how to pay for it. Another program that we're quite proud of is our Kilowatts for a Cause and Kilowatts for a Cure program. These are charity-based solar programs, which are just being launched as we speak. So let's talk about one of the projects that the Energy Alliance Group and OHM are working on. As I mentioned, it's for the University of Michigan Intercooperative Council. They have a lot of focus on sustainability, and we have been retained to assist them with sustainability improvement projects throughout the portfolio of facilities that they own. The Intercoop, or the ICC, is a nonprofit that was founded in 1934. It's student-owned and operated housing. So there's a board, decisions are made by the students, but yet there's an administration staff that actually handle the day-to-day operations. And they currently own 20 facilities around the University of Michigan campus and Ann Arbor. And it's a wide variety of housing units, from a apartment-based that houses 200 plus students to house-based that is housing maybe a half dozen students. In 2015, the Energy Alliance Group was retained by the ICC to start looking at how they can improve their sustainability through energy efficiency improvements and looking at renewable energy sources. Our primary goal then is to develop some energy efficiency and cost recovery solutions for their facilities. So we're not only looking at the technology side, but we're also looking at the operation side, because ultimately what we're trying to do is reduce their cost. And then finally, the first project that we're working on is their largest facility. It's called Escher Hall. Escher Hall is located on the north campus of the University of Michigan, and it's the largest building there on Gilbert. It is a 3-floor suite complex, and it houses over 200 students. Within the facility, they have several commercial kitchens, recreation areas, so they have an exercise room, study rooms, all sorts of different recreation rooms. And then finally, they're all set up as suites. So along with the commercial kitchens, there's also shared kitchen areas for each one of the suites and shared bath areas. Here's some of the exterior pictures of Escher Hall. Gives you an idea of its layout, the 3 floors. First floor is actually halfway underground. So the goals of the project is, one, improve the buildings. They have some buildings there that are actually historical. They still have old electrical, no insulation. So a big focus is improving the buildings and actually taking care of the envelope. Second goal is to focus on reducing their utility cost, conserving water, and somehow integrating renewables within the ICC community. We know that renewables cannot be adopted for every facility, but what we can do is put together some renewable plans for some of their facilities. The ultimate goal here is to achieve a positive savings to investment ratio. And what does that mean? That the savings incurred through their utility reductions, maintenance reductions, end-of-life replacement reductions, and the cost recovery, meaning recovering cash, those savings are going to be greater than the physical cost to engage in the projects. And then finally, and most importantly to all our clients, little or no out-of-pocket cost incurred. And in fact, our focus as an organization is to not use the client's money. Conserve capital, because capital is king. The team for the project includes, of course, OHM, ourselves. It will be financed by Pace Finance. They are based out of Texas, and they have an office in Michigan. And then finally, Levin Energy Partners and the Lean and Green Michigan PACE program. While I don't expect you to read all of these, we have a variety of technologies that we'll be looking at, and sources for these technologies will come through both the Energy Alliance Group and OHM. Financing will be driven by the Energy Alliance Group. We'll be looking at 3, quite possibly more sources, primarily PACE, Michigan Saves, which is a Michigan-based program, and solar power purchase agreements. Energy Alliance Group will be looking at the incentives that ICC will qualify for. Now, remember, they're a nonprofit, so they cannot take advantage of any federal tax credits. But what they can do is they can take advantage of local utility rebates, but also they can take advantage of the federal tax credits through power purchase agreements, whereas the provider is taking credit and they can offer a lower cost for renewables. And then finally, services, or as we call them, integrated services. And these are more of the soft cost services that can be provided along with these projects. And that includes your engineering, asset management, construction management, and so on. So at the beginning of this webcast, I talk about a paradigm shift. We need to get out of the rut of continually having projects go unfunded. And rather than having 98% of them go unfunded, why can't we work towards getting 98% of them funded? Well, one of the tools that we are currently using that allows companies to do this far more than they did before on the project financing side is PACE. PACE project financing, or better known as property assessed clean energy project financing. So we're going to take some time and talk a little bit about that so everyone has an understanding of how that works and how it can be used to benefit OHM's clients and ours. So first and foremost, it is a financing program that can only be used for energy efficiency, water conservation, and renewable energy projects only. The structure of it is that the financing is actually granted through a voluntary property tax assessment that's taken on by the property itself. It's non-recourse. The financing is actually secured by the property, so there's no personal guarantee that's required. Remember, you're taking on an assessment, a property tax assessment. So what is that? Well, first, it's a state law. And second, it has to be adopted locally, or we create what's called a PACE district, because locally is where property taxes are actually being collected. So how did this all come about? Well, PACE in essence has existed for a very, very long time because it's using the property tax assessment mechanism that's been used since the 1700s to do what? Public projects. Whether you're improving a sewer, putting in a new water line, or getting a millage to build a new library or operate in a library, it's the same mechanism. A source provides the financing. The payment is collected through property tax. And irregardless of who owns the property, that property tax assessment has to be paid. The benefit to the client is that the property itself is assuming the debt, not the client. And upon sale, that PACE note or that assessment is transferred with the property. So there's no payout required in the end. There's no principal that has to be paid off. The owner is only responsible for paying the assessment during ownership. It allows us to get access to long-term and fixed rate funding upwards towards 20, 25, sometimes 30 years. And again, it's repaid as a property tax. So it physically shows up on the owner's property tax bill, and it's paid twice a year along with property taxes. There is no down payment required, and it covers 100% of the project cost. So unlike traditional funding where they're looking for the owner to put a little skin in the game and they need it to be 80-20 or a 70-30 split, no money comes from the owner. And all the costs are covered. So all of your engineering cost, your management fees, legal fees, everything are covered by the funding. And as I touched on before, our goal is to set it up so that the savings is greater than the cost. And in fact, in the state of Michigan, this is part of the statute that any project greater than $250,000, it is a performance contract. And again, the savings has to be greater than the cost. What's different about this versus a traditional capital funding program is that PACE allows you to include the maintenance and end-of-life replacement cost. Now, why is that? Well, it's part of the property. We want to make sure that that property is always being improved. Now, being that these upgrades are treated as real property versus personal property, that means the property itself, the value of it, is actually increasing because we are improving the property. So this helps on the resell value of it. Because it's a property tax, it does not show up as debt. It is just an expense. So on the balance sheet for the organization, they're not showing this as a long-term liability. They're only showing it as an expense because why? Property tax is treated as an expense. It is not a liability. So without that liability, it does not affect the company's credit, nor does it affect their ability to take on future debt. The incentives that we look for, whether they're local utility or federal, PACE has no effect on our ability to take advantage of them. So no effect on incentives that come from your local utility company or any tax credits or depreciation that companies can take advantage of through federal and state taxes. Now, one thing to point out, we are not tax specialists. So when companies look at how to depreciate this capital, they need to consult their financial wizards to figure out how it should be handled, because there's advantages and disadvantages of doing that. So where is PACE? Well, it originated in California in 2009. It actually launched in the residential market and then quickly moved into the commercial and industrial market. It's been adopted in 33 U.S. states and the District of Columbia, and it has expanded into other countries. Australia was the first, and there's a lot of interest from other countries in this type of program. And in fact, we just got recently contacted by the economic development in Barbados. So if anybody's looking for a project in the warm weather, we might be going there soon. So what projects qualify? Well, first and foremost, facility upgrades. That's a lot of what we do, but it can also be used for new construction. Now, people ask, well, how can you use it for new construction when it's an energy efficiency improvement? Well, every project has a baseline. whether that's code or local building requirements. But today, when we put a light bulb in here in Michigan, minimum would be linear fluorescent or compact fluorescent, or even a parking lot, you can actually still use metal halide. Well, most companies do not pay the extra cost for the better product or the more efficient project. So let's go back to lighting. They're not going to pay that extra cost to go to LED. Why? Because they're focused on initial expense. I want to keep my initial expenses down. Well, PACE bridges that gap. PACE will pay for that upgrade to go to LED. And how do we calculate the savings? Well, you determine how or what it's going to cost to operate with the proposed technologies, the linear fluorescent, and then what's the cost of operating the proposed energy efficiency technology. That becomes your delta. We can use it for process improvements. If a company has a process that is very utility labored, high energy cost or high water costs, and there's a new process out there that can reduce those, PACE can be used to finance that. However, a word of caution. Remember, any upgrades using PACE financing becomes real property. So if you used it for process equipment and you wanted to move, or you're going to sell, to move that equipment, you have to basically pay off the note, the PACE note, for that particular piece of equipment. Now, this is not something that's used very often, but it does exist. And then finally, refinancing of prior projects. There are projects out there that have been recently, completed in the last year, and as long as they improved the facility with the latest energy efficiency, and there's a delta between what they could have used and what they did use, we can refinance that amount. So what technologies qualify for PACE financing from the energy efficiency side of things? Well, the way we look at it, if we can calculate an energy savings, most likely it'll qualify. But that's going to be different in every single state. And the advantage of PACE is it allows us to bundle technologies together. Meaning, if I'm installing a high-speed door, they're not cheap. It might take us 30 or 40 years to actually pay for that. But if I combine it with a lighting upgrade that's saving 50, 60, 70% of their utilities, we can bundle those together. The savings from the lighting offsets any loss from the high-speed doors.